Hey everybody, let's make something kind of cool, maybe called a collage or a photo montage. Let's look at some artwork by an artist named Romare Bearden, and then we'll get started on this idea here. So let's drop this up. Cool. Alright, so Romare Bearden was an artist that he was born in 1911 and he died in 1988. Okay, so he was part of the Harlem Renaissance. So you can read a little bit about him at the artstory.org or just Google his name and you can find out a little bit more about him. Um, so he was a painter and a printmaker, but what we want to think about today and what we're going to look about is his collages, okay? And they're kind of interesting. This is the Romare Bearden Foundation website, which I found, and they have some of his artwork on there too, and a little bit more about him, which is kind of cool. But one of the ones I wanted to look at is called Three Folk Musicians. And so what you can tell about this artwork is that he uses regular flat paper, okay, just colored paper that he either painted and cut out or tore and collaged, and then he also uses some photographs which he cut out. So like the hands and the noses and the eyes and the mouths here are actual photographs. So in some ways you can call this a photo montage where it's made up of many different photos together. The same thing here with this one called Summertime is there are parts of it that are actual photographs, okay, maybe from magazines or photographs, and then other parts that are just flat areas of color. So he's mixing this idea of just making shapes from paper or color and actually using photographs. So that's kind of what we want to think about today as we start making this type of collage. So one way to think about the idea that we are working with is a collage, which just means to glue, right? To cut out things and glue them together. And another way to talk about it is a photo montage, which basically means just a bunch of photos cut up and put together in some way. And so we're going to work on that. So what I want you to do today is make a person and a pet. But you've got some rules here that are going to make this tricky. Okay? So the person cannot be made out of any people parts. So when you look through your magazine and you cut out things, you're not going to actually be cutting out the head of a person or the arms or legs of a person, right? Of a human. You're going to have to make your person, right, out of non-people parts. And then you're going to make a pet, but it shouldn't be made out of animal parts. In fact, the pet should be made out of like non-mobile parts, like non-animal parts. So it could be like vegetables or inorganic objects or something like that. So think about that a little bit. That's a limit that's going to have to make you a little bit more creative. It's also going to end up making your pictures kind of weird, but also sort of cool. So a person and a pet. So the first thing that we gotta do is take a magazine and find some cool pictures. So just open up the magazine, and if you see something that looks interesting, just tear the whole page out of the magazine, okay? And just make a stack of stuff that you think looks kind of cool. Let's see. Ooh, there's the Geico gecko. But he probably won't help us that much because, first of all, he's kind of like an animal. So that's not going to be our pet, but maybe he could be part of our person. Whatever. Let's see what happens. There's some Christmas cookies. We'll just keep flipping through this magazine and we'll keep tearing out stuff until we get some cool stuff. Alright. Those could be kind of cool. We'll see if those work for us. So spend a little time just ripping apart your magazines, okay? If you want to really challenge yourself, then use one magazine okay, and make this project out of just that one magazine, okay? Instead of trying to think, oh, I want to get these things or I want to do these things, set a limit for yourself, okay? Because the more you limit yourself, the more you have to be creative and inventive, all right? So I'm going to cut out a few parts and pieces from the magazine and show you what I've done to start creating this person and this pet. Okay, cool. Now this is getting sort of weird, and that's fine. Alright, so I spent more time cutting this than you waited for me, since you waited no time at all. But now I'm starting on my person. So my person right now has a cat head and some hard-boiled eggs for eyes and some kind of a lamp for a hat and some Neutrogena for the body, right? My pet's a little farther along. It has a little pinwheel here, and then I cut out these popsicles for the legs. It's got a sandwich or some croissant breakfast sandwich for a head, and then these things that look like eyes. And I thought maybe I'd put a tail on here made out of this plant. So it's getting kind of strange, but that's alright. So it's a pet. It's not made out of any living or mobile animal parts, right? So that's the limit there. And then the person so far is not made out of any people parts. When you take your pictures out, okay, you'll be tempted to just do it as fast as possible and just cut out something like this little dog bone thing and just put it on. But if you really want this to look cool, you actually got to take the time to cut out the shape and get all of the background off of it, okay? And then you'll be able to mess with that idea a little bit more. So it takes some time to cut out, but it's actually kind of fun to cut out a whole bunch of shapes and then mess around with them and see what kind of weird construction you can end up with, okay? So I don't want to be in too big of a rush, but it takes some time to cut these pieces of magazine out and make a picture out of them, okay? So I think you get the idea. You just need to spend some time doing this. I'm just kind of offering this to you. So maybe this can be some good feet for my person walking along, okay? Or maybe I'll end up transforming this into the arms and the legs if I use all of these together. We'll see. I'll keep working on this for a moment and then I'll come back and see what we have for our person and our pet. Okay, so I spent a little time cutting those things out. So now I'm going to start to glue some things together. So this is a good time to use a glue stick, okay? You can use regular white glue if you want to, but the glue stick works pretty good because these pieces of magazine paper are really thin, okay? And since that paper's thin, it tends to tear pretty easily. And so I just like to put the glue on the piece that I'm going to glue on top of. So I'll put a little bit of glue on there and just add those pieces and build this thing up one at a time. I keep it on the paper so I know how much space I have to work with as far as the size of the paper. So depending on what size of paper you have, you can make these collages bigger or smaller. I'm just using a regular piece of computer paper for now because that may be what you have around, but if you have some larger pieces of paper or you have some poster board or something and you really get into this and you think it's cool, you could make it even bigger. So we're gonna glue this guy together and see what kind of creature we have constructed in just a moment with his popsicle legs and his breakfast sandwich for an eye. There we go. So far we've got that all together. And then once it's all done, if you want to go ahead and glue it down to the paper, that's not a bad idea, just because now it's going to be a little bit, that'll give it a little bit more structure and it won't fall apart on you. Okay, so I think you get the idea. I'm going to glue up my person here and finish that up since I have this crazy pet over here. So I'll be back. Alright, so I've got that done now. So I've got my person and my pet. My pet's made out of no actual living parts. I mean, I guess the plant was probably living, and some of the sandwich was living at one time, but you know what I mean. The person is made out of no people parts. So things are pretty strange. Things are pretty unusual. You can stop here and keep this and be done. Or if you want to go on and check out part 2, we're going to make a background using the same concept of photo montage. And then we can send these guys for a little walk in their neighborhood. So let's make the background in part 2. So come back and try that out next time. Alright, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.